Welcome to IFO Classroom Season 4. In this season, we'll bring to you classes from the top university in Wales, the land of the dragons. In this season, we will have Cardiff University, University of South Wales, Cardiff Metropolitan University, Bangor University, Glendale University, Swansea University, University of Wales, Trinity St. David, and Aberystwyth University. In this season of IFO Classroom, we together will study so many different subjects, from design to marketing to even AI and so much more. If you are interested in studying in Wales or simply just want to experience the classroom abroad, tune in at 8 p.m. every Tuesday on IFO Facebook and YouTube. And right now, live from Wales.
Hello everyone, it's Bao here. I hope you're staying safe and well amid this whole entire COVID-19 shenanigan. So throughout months and months of staying inside, of social distancing, I have grown very, very much reliant on online retailing, much more than I'd like to admit. And so I'm curious, what happens behind the scene when you click order an item, it gets shipped to your house, but then it takes different turns at different warehouse throughout their journey to your house. So how does that work? That will be one of the main questions that we'll answer with Aberystwyth University today in a masterclass in supply chain management. Right now, IFO Classroom Season 4, live from Wales.
Xin chào tất cả các bạn khán giả của IFO và chào mừng mọi người đã quay trở lại với IFO Classroom mùa 4 Live from Wales. Hôm nay đã là tập thứ 7 của chặng đường 8 tập của chúng mình đi thăm các trường đại học ở xứ Wales rồi. Và hôm nay thì chúng ta vẫn sẽ đi đến một ngôi trường khác, một ngôi trường vô cùng thú vị với một cái tên nó khá là xoắn lưỡi, Aberystwyth University, và về một chủ đề nó cực kỳ là khó nhưng mà cũng không kém phần thú vị, đó là về supply chain management. Nếu như các bạn đã từng mua đồ trên Shopee, những cái là các bạn đã từng, thì các bạn cũng sẽ cần phải biết là như thế nào để đơn hàng của mình đi từ người bán cho đến kho trung chuyển, cho đến tận nhà mình mà nó không bị lạc. Thì đây sẽ là câu hỏi mà Logistics và Supply Chain Management sẽ phải giải đáp với chúng ta. Trước khi đi vào lớp học thì chúng ta hãy cùng quay trở lại với các bạn học sinh, sinh viên rất là quen thuộc của lớp. 2 tuần, 3 tuần vừa rồi thì Bảo Trâm vừa đi vắng và đã có bạn lớp phó Như Huyền ở thay. Thì xin chào Như Huyền. Hôm nay Như Huyền quay lại làm học sinh thì Như Huyền cảm thấy như thế nào?
Hôm nay thì em rất là hứng thú với cái chủ đề Global Supply Chain Management này, cũng bởi vì em có chung thắc mắc với chị ạ. Và hơn nữa là môn này cũng là một môn học trong chương trình mà em đang học ở trường đại học á, nên là em cũng rất là hứng thú với buổi học ngày hôm nay. Đó là lý do mà em quyết định quay trở lại với IFO Classroom nhưng với vai trò là một học sinh.
Cảm ơn Như Huyền, rất là vui khi mà có Như Huyền quay trở lại lớp với tư cách là một học sinh. Mình nhìn thấy có Hà Thanh rất là mới này, Hà Thanh ơi.
Hello chị Trâm, xin chào mọi người. Thì mình là Hà Thanh và đây là lần đầu tiên mà mình tham gia IFO Classroom. Vì sau này mình cũng có định hướng đi du học Master, nên là mình cũng muốn thử trải nghiệm cái lớp học MBA này xem là nó như thế nào, thì mình rất là háo hức.
Cảm ơn Hà Thanh rất nhiều và hy vọng là lớp học hôm nay sẽ cho Hà Thanh nhìn thấy được là tương lai của mình nếu mà mình đi du học thì nó sẽ như thế nào nha. Còn mình cũng thấy một bạn học sinh mới nữa, Hân Nguyễn. Hân ơi.
Chào chị Trâm và xin chào tất cả mọi người. Mình là Hân, mình cũng là sinh viên năm 2 như là Hà Thanh. Ngoài một tí lo lắng thì mình cũng là mong là sau cái buổi học này sẽ được mở mang một tí và sẽ có định hướng rõ ràng hơn trong cái hành trình học tập sau này của mình.
Cảm ơn Hân rất nhiều và cảm ơn tất cả các bạn học sinh cũng như các bạn khán giả đã đang theo dõi lớp học của chúng ta ngày hôm nay. Chúng ta sẽ cùng vào lớp học với thầy Andrew Thomas. Thầy Andrew Thomas sẽ là đại diện của trường đại học Aberystwyth University. Trường đã được thành lập vào năm 1872 và hiện tại đang là đại học lớn nhất của Vương quốc Anh. Và ngay bây giờ đây, chúng ta hãy cùng chào đón thầy Andrew Thomas.
Thank you very much for inviting me to deliver a speech or lecture today. We are looking at how we can connect or how supply chains will be managed in the future, considering what is actually happening on the world stage at the moment with various issues and problems throughout the world, and how is that going to impact on industry, more than anything, and manufacturing industry going forward. So I'll introduce you to some of the geopolitical and economic issues that we have in the world and how that's going to impact on business strategy. So the title of this presentation today is Geopolitical and Economic Changes and Their Impact on Business Strategy. So it's a high-level view of businesses. We don't normally do a huge amount of work on the geopolitical and economic changes that affect businesses, but it's absolutely essential that business understands what's going on in the world and how that may impact on their businesses going forward, especially if the business is an international focused or a global focused business. So we're going to be looking at some of the geopolitical and economic issues, how they impact on business strategies, and then how they impact on supply chains. So the key themes that we're going to look at are primarily global manufacturing. We won't spend too much time on manufacturing as a concept, but because manufacturing is a growth or a wealth generator within economies, we have to look at global manufacturing because that's the key driver for financial security in the world today. We look at the nature of global manufacturing, we look at the opportunities and threats, and then we'll start to look at some of the new ideas around smart factories and smart systems and approaches to managing those systems, and then a future research agenda, which is not for PhD students. What we're saying is this is the area that we as universities need to start researching now in order for us to provide the latest information to our student groups. So you're probably all aware of the issue of globalization and how globalization is changing the world. We have shortening life cycle of products and services. We have a custom-driven economy and rapidly changing business environments. The top two elements are quite important. We have a shortening of life cycle of products. Today we have the latest Apple iPhone, whatever it is, 12, 13 maybe. There's already a 14, 15 and 16 already in production, either in production or in design or in whatever phase, because that shortening of those life cycles means that new and more updated products come in much more frequently than they used to do. And that's down to the fact that we've got the technologies to drive and change things very, very quickly. And that creates a customer-driven economy, an economy that we have to change and adjust our products to suit what the customer wants. There's no point in us deciding or designing something and then saying, oh, the customer will buy this. We have to understand what the customer wants and create a product that our customer wants and needs. And that is now changing the business environment rapidly. It's continuously changing. Supply chains change, designs change, customer requirements change, and so on. And of course, this means that we now have this concept of globalization, where the manufacture, design, making of any product is spread across the world. And we're shifting towards a knowledge-based entrepreneurial economy driven by innovative technologies. So for the last 40 odd years or so, all these things have come in to create this new economy. And where you are sitting now is you see these endpoints. Where I'm sitting now, I've been through these phases. Moving from an industrial economy through to a knowledge-based economy has been a huge shift over the last 40 years. So let's have a look at where global manufacturing is today. This is a percentage of global manufacturing in the world. And you'll see on the left-hand side, China having just over 20% of the global manufacturing, with the United States around about 17, 18%. Japan around about 10%, and then Germany around about 7.5%. And the rest of the countries slip further down the right line to Mexico in 10th there. And that's an interesting aspect. As we all understand, China has a huge growth factor in manufacturing, and if this was 5 years ago, you would have seen the United States ahead of China. But today, 5 years on, you see China ahead of the United States. So you see that China is a global manufacturing power, and they're already looking at working with countries like Vietnam and so on in producing products and services as part of the extension to China. And therefore the growth in the Far East is going to be massive and huge, and it'll remain that way for a long period of time. So you can see that China is a major player and the United States is a major manufacturing player. And then the other countries afterwards drop significantly from that. So Japan, which once used to be a manufacturing superpower, is about half that of the China economy. In relation, so what I've got there is effectively the manufacturing output, not the percentage of manufacturing, but manufacturing output. And you can see again, China, the United States, Japan, Germany, the same graphical structure as the graph before, but in percentage terms, percentage of national output, and the global manufacturing is 20, 18 and 10%. So one of the reasons I included this particular slide, because it's very important to see this in its context. This is expenditure on research and design per country. And again, you'll see China ahead of the United States ahead of Japan, Germany, South Korea and India. And this is the pure expenditure in US dollars, billions of US dollars. And you see again China ahead of the USA. Now in the past, we've generally tended to see China as a country that would throw labour at a job rather than use technology. But you can actually see here that China invests significant amounts of R&D expenditure into manufacturing. And that's what keeps them ahead. They're a hugely technologically advanced country. And will remain like that for some considerable time. And where has this all come from? Well, I'm assuming you know what the BRIC or who the BRIC countries are. Does anybody know who the BRIC countries are?
Is that BRIC? So B is Brazil, R is Russia, I is India, and C is China.
That's right, yeah. And you'll see then, even though so the BRIC countries were identified as the new emerging countries some 20 odd years ago. They were seen as the new emerging countries that will actually take over from the West in manufacturing capability. And you'll see here that off that graph, you'll see China in grey and India in red, and you'll see Brazil in green, and you see Russia in blue. And in there, you see that China are so far ahead of the other 3 countries that they've got within that BRIC quartet. And you'll see the growth from 2014 up to 2018 significantly increasing. And you'll see some of the areas such as India trying to increase, but Russia and Brazil stagnating to some extent. There is some growth, but there's not a huge amount of growth. So we now see within the BRIC countries, there's only the B in the BRIC that is really pushing the country forward. And then we have the mint countries. So the mint countries are the next set of emerging countries coming through, and they've been identified as Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria and Turkey as the 4 key mint countries coming through. There we are. So on this slide we will see here a graph from the World Bank, Goldman Sachs, and you'll see there's 2 sections to this. On the left hand side you'll see the gross domestic product of the countries in 2012 and the estimated gross domestic product by 2050. So does anybody know what GDP means? Gross domestic product. Do you know what that means?
GDP is like the monetary value of goods and service that are produced in a country in like a given period of time.
Spot on. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. It's basically a measurement of manufacturing or production output. Related as basically a measure of growth of products and services sold within the country. And you'll see on the left hand side there, you'll see the gross domestic product as of 2012, the US, China, Japan, Germany, France, all the top 4 or 5 economies. Exactly the same as the graph that we showed earlier on. And you'll see Mexico, Indonesia and Turkey, Mexico 14th, Indonesia 16th, Turkey 17th and Nigeria 39th. And that is of 2012. We know that to be the case. But on the right-hand side, you'll see that the gross domestic product estimated for 2050, which is still 30 years away, we now see a very different GDP profile. You now see China ahead of the US, but India has moved from 10th to 3rd. Brazil has moved from 7th to 5th, but now you'll see Mexico and Indonesia at 8th and 9th, where they used to be 14th and 16th. Nigeria at 13th, where they used to be 39th, and Turkey used to be 17th and now 14th. So the pull through of these mint and BRIC countries are getting more so in the next 30 years. So this is a prediction of how global manufacturing will change. The Far East will become much richer, and the West will start to struggle to cope with the changing nature of the economy. So what are the problems of growth at this level? So what do you think? There's a couple of questions there. What do you think will be the problem if these countries grow to this rate very, very quickly? What do you think may happen? So will there be opportunities here? So the power shift, the economic power shift is likely to shift over into the Far East. You'll see there that China, you'll see there's India in the top three. You'll see Indonesia. And all countries related. Philippines is coming in at the bottom there, but still far ahead of where it used to be. Shifts, the global economic shift in manufacturing and GDP will primarily focus in the Far East and leave the Central Europe and Western Europe to one side. So there's going to be a significant shift into your area. Your countries are going to be right at the front of this economic growth. So yourselves now coming out of school and going into university, when you come out of university, you'll see that countries like Vietnam, Indonesia and other countries like that will all start to grow in this area. So there will be a desperate need of very clever people like yourselves back in your own countries to help generate this economy. So the opportunities for yourselves as individuals is going to be hugely beneficial to you. So we now see the global shift going into the Far East. And the Western countries are now starting to worry. What's going to happen? How can we take back control? How can we bring back manufacturing into the West again? What we're now seeing is that there are a number of initiatives that were generated around 2 or 3 years back, primarily in the USA through Donald Trump, when Donald Trump was president. What he wanted to do is to repatriate the supply chains back into the United States. So basically, he wanted to deglobalize the world, bringing back manufacturing into the United States of America. So Ford moved their jobs back from China and Mexico back into the United States. Caterpillar, in the big truck excavating company, invested money in Texas and repatriated their supply chains back from Japan. Adidas repatriated the China supply chain back into Germany in an attempt to control production from their country. And there's been a number of problems with that, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. And this is all down to this business of manufacturing is going through a genuine transformational period. It's driven by increased labour costs, shifting demand patterns, heightened market volatility, and the significant price rise of oil. And we'll discuss this term, this paragraph, in a few slides later on, which is all part of the geopolitical shift. The next 2 slides will give you an idea of where supply chains are going, okay? So I've just mentioned that Donald Trump's idea was to repatriate manufacturing back into the United States, bring back all the manufacturing into the United States and keep all the wealth for himself. Now, it doesn't work like that. And you know that yourselves, you're students of this area, you know that doesn't work. And on this, you'll see that there's a PricewaterhouseCoopers 2019 report into global supply chain management. And they asked 500 of the world's top senior supply chain directors in the top 500 companies in the world what they were actually doing. And on the left-hand side, you see in that diagram, you'll have 5 key functions within a supply chain or within a business. The planning, the strategic planning. So where do we actually locate our factories? What do we buy? And so on. The sourcing, who do we buy from? The making, how do we manufacture the product? Where do we deliver the product to? Through delivery, through warehousing, stocking, and transportation. And then what they term enablers, the clever stuff. Who designs the products? Who produces the services, and so on. And what they found is that on the right-hand side, you'll see a light orange and a dark orange line. Just stick with the light orange because the light and dark oranges are very different, not much difference between them. And on the right-hand side, you'll see how much of that activity is outsourced into other parts of the world. Okay, so planning, you'll see that only between 2 and 5% of the strategic planning within business is outsourced to other parts of the world. And for sourcing, only 5 to 6% is outsourced to other parts of the world. Manufacturing or making, there's up to 36% is being produced across the world, and delivery up to nearly 50% across the world. And then we come back to the intellectual property, the clever stuff, the stuff that makes you the money, which is new product development, new product introductions, supply chain centers of excellence. Only 7% of those are outsourced to other parts of the world. What is this survey actually telling you about the top 500 companies in the world? What do you think it's saying?
I'm guessing that all of the like intellectual stuffs that like you mentioned about the patents and everything that they owned, the things that actually make money, like you said, is where they will keep it within their countries, but then the making and the delivering, where it would cause a lot of like pollutions and harm to the environment, and they would offshore that risk and that cost to other countries.
Absolutely, spot on. Yeah. So really, what they're looking at is, if you look at the strategic decisions that are close to the company, the strategic planning, the sourcing, the intellectual property that's being developed is all kept within the country of origin. That's not saying it's kept within the USA, in the country of origin. So if it's Adidas footwear is held within Germany, if it's Nike, it will be in the USA. That's how it works. But the manufacturing and delivery is done further afield because of two things. As you just said, environmental impact on supply chains. They don't want long supply chains because the environmental impact. And also, manufacturing and transport is cheap. Where you make your money is through intellectual properties. It's through innovation, innovative products, innovative processes. Your product is, to some extent, is the cheap bit. And you've got to produce lots of that before you make any money. So globalization hasn't gone. It doesn't matter what Donald Trump tried to do back in the day, it still won't happen because you have a need to design in this country and make elsewhere. So you design in Vietnam and make in the UK to sell to the UK market. You're not going to make in Vietnam and then fly everything over to the UK. You'll design in Vietnam and make in the UK. And that's where we start looking at smart factories and smart systems. And we've got exactly the same, but for an automotive supply chain instead. So vehicle manufacturing, and they've got local, regional, and global. And as you see there, if you follow just the dark red line, you'll see exactly the same happens. Planning, sourcing, the strategic decisions, and the intellectual property through the enablers is done locally, and regionally and globally, you shift all the manufacturing over to another part of the world. A, because it's cheaper, B, because you've got a much more effective environmental strategy. We've done a little bit of industrial economics, okay? So that's all behind us now. We know that we've still got a globalized industry. We still know where we're going, okay? So now we're going to start moving into what value chains look like, okay? So we've talked about supply chains, but supply chains can only operate within a business value chain, okay? So supply chain is a small element of what we would consider to be a bigger picture, which is called a value chain, a business value chain. So on the left-hand side, you see there some strategic decisions, okay? So the first thing that a business will enter into is this whole concept of a strategic decision-making. If we have a business and we're looking at a global business, we want to know where we locate our business, what part of the world do we locate into, what are we going to sell, what are we going to make, who do we buy from, who do we sell to, what if things go wrong, what are the contingencies if things go wrong. And those are some of the key strategic decisions any business owner would have to make. Then as we move over to the right-hand side, you will now see a box saying business management. And to the left of that business management marker, you'll see customer, business, suppliers, and controls. And that is a supply chain. And in this particular case, what you have is your customer, which is part of the demand chain, who feeds information to the business, which is your business, if you were to put yourself as a business manager, and your suppliers. So your business is connected to the demand chain and the supply chain. So if we were to take a customer that walks into your business and buys a product, then what the customer will be doing is asking you, in terms of information for a certain number of products. They will specify the colours, the shapes, the sizes, the quantities, when do you actually want the product, and so on. Your business gets that information and then goes back to your suppliers to ask for the parts to be made. The suppliers then give you the parts, and then you manufacture the product and give it to the customer. So if we were to put this into the case of making an aeroplane, for instance, our demand chain would be an airline company. They will come in and they will ask Airbus in France to produce 20 A320s for them. And they'll want them over a certain period of time. So the customer, as Cathay Pacific, will ask the business to produce 20 aircraft. That business takes that information and then goes back to the suppliers and says, well, we need 20 aircraft. And now that will be made up of 40 engines, 60 wheels, 20 cockpits, 1,000 seats, and so on and so forth. The suppliers get that information. So those green lines going back from customer to business and from business to supplier are lines of information. The supply chain gets all that information, produces the products, and sends them back through to the business. So it goes from right to left. Suppliers will supply the parts to the business. Us as a business will build the aircraft, and then we'll push that to the customer. So you have a circle going on, a loop going on in the process. We have our control system at the top, which then is a complex computer system that will make sure that the customer and the suppliers are both synchronized together so that we know exactly what we're buying, when we're buying, to produce what's needed. Now, if we take some of the functions, we can see between the customer, business, and suppliers, there's a whole range of functions. We've got logistics, we have project managers, procurement or buyers, inventory management people or stores people, forecasters, and our suppliers. So we've got a range of different people, all with specific skills working in our business in order to supply us with the appropriate products. But the whole purpose of a supply chain is to synchronize what the customer wants with what the supplier can produce. And if you can synchronize what the customer wants with the supplier and connect them together, you've got an effective supply chain. But the supply chain is just not enough. We've also now need to look at the parts on the bottom, the financial management systems. So for Airbus, they will need economists to work out, well, when's the next area of growth, which airline industry is going to be wanting new aircraft soon. We need finance people. It takes millions to produce an aircraft, and we need lots of financial backers. So we need finance people to work out and provide the infrastructure for us. And then once we've got the contracts, we need accountants to make sure that we're actually spending our money correctly. So we've got a strategic decision making, we've got business management, we've got financial management and economics, accounting and finance, and then we have business development. We need marketing. Marketing is absolutely important. We need a branding, we need to understand the voice of the customer, what the customer wants, and we want to be the customer of choice. So taking into consideration Airbus as an aircraft company, what would be Airbus's major competitor? Yeah, there's only two major manufacturers in the world. It's Airbus and Boeing. So that marketing side of things, where we think, well, you don't really need to sell Airbus, do you? Everybody knows Airbus. Well, yes, but they also know Boeing as well. And marketing is all about creating that opportunity to sell your product. And if you become a customer of choice, then you've got your market. But Boeing is very competitive and Airbus is very competitive. And those are the two major superpowers in aircraft manufacture. Okay then, so why have I used aircraft? Well, one of the demand chain elements of aircraft is tourism. And tourism has been badly hit, hasn't it, over the last few years? COVID. So it's basically the whole world is shut down. Boeing and Airbus are not selling aircraft anymore because there isn't a demand for it. So tourism above there is absolutely essential for the airline industry. It's tourism that generates the interest in the airlines, and the airlines generate the interest in aircraft manufacture. So tourism is a major demand chain driver for the aerospace industry. So just to let you know, when you start, and if you are starting to look at university degree courses and so on, you really need to be looking, if you're looking at business schools that look at strategic management, business management, financial management through accounting, economics and finance, marketing and tourism. These will be key disciplines within universities that all form part of this value chain. So if you're going to study in these areas, this is what businesses and industry want. People with that knowledge of this type of value chain. So, will repatriation of those supply chains provide jobs? Well, no, it didn't work. Donald Trump's idea of making America great again by bringing all their work back into America definitely didn't work. Because as you could see from the PricewaterhouseCoopers work, all the manufacturing was still being done across the world, not back within the USA. So it doesn't work. And even if America could bring all that work back into the country, it didn't have the labour because they haven't trained them up and so on. And now companies are now starting to use automation, starting to use robotics. So now we don't need people to the same extent as we do before. So it's unlikely to see the benefit in terms of jobs. So it's a very flawed way of bringing it all back into America and thinking we can make America great again, because it doesn't work like that. Bit scary, really, coming from somebody that should have known better in that sense. So what are we talking about? Supply chain repatriation is a problem, but we need a new mindset. There's no point in us worrying about bringing jobs back into the country of origin. It's a new mindset that's needed. We need to start thinking differently about how businesses operate. And the whole idea of bringing in computing and connections to computing and using cyberspace is where our new business lines are coming from, okay? And we've now got a whole range of global uncertainties. Now, on the left-hand side, as you just mentioned correctly, COVID-19, the pandemic, has caused major uncertainties within the world. We're still only about 30 to 40% where we were pre-COVID pandemic, okay, in global manufacturing terms. So we're still well off what we used to be before the pandemic. On the right-hand side, we've got Brexit and the EU, which is more to do, obviously, with Europe and the UK in particular, but it still has an impact on the global stage. And then right back in the middle there is the war between the Ukraine and Russia at this point, which is now going to change things significantly going forward. So as I mentioned, COVID-19 has hit the global industry. We're only about 30 to 40% of where we were pre-COVID. So that's a huge loss. We're still 60% short of where we were pre-COVID. Depressed markets and low consumer confidence. So that's the problem to existing markets. But if I had a new mindset, I would see that as a massive opportunity for any business in the world that's switched on, that knows where to go and what they want to do. The fact that we're only at 40% of pre-COVID levels gives us a huge opportunity to do something different in the market. So every one of these is negative. There is very much a positive when I start to talk about a new mindset, changing that mindset from negativity to positivity, from negativity to opportunity. What's happening in Russia and the Ukraine is putting a huge pressure on the oil and gas reliability, certainly within Europe. Energy prices are starting to increase hugely in this country. And uncertainty about whether this war will continue for a long time is all going to start creating problems. So energy prices in Europe are going to become massive. Energy crises in America are going to become massive. So if we were to repatriate our supply chains back into America, and now we've got this war going on, all of a sudden the cost of manufacturing would shoot through the roof. So globalization is important. It now opens up opportunities to the East and the Far East to produce much more, because you're less affected by the oil prices and the energy prices as a result of this war. From Brexit and the EU, then there's uncertainty in trading under the World Trade Organization rules. Our supply chains will need to be changed, and there's an uncertainty of the long-term impact. So there are lots of geopolitical changes here that change the way in which we start to think. But if you start to look at what we're going to be doing here, then there's new opportunities, new mindsets and new opportunities. the central bit there on oil and gas and energy price rises. If we now start to build companies that start to look at energy neutral technologies, you're likely to grow that business significantly going forward, because it's all about reducing energy consumption going forward. The impact of the geopolitical change, certainly within this war, is energy dependence by Europe on Russia. The need to reduce energy dependence is now being talked about. So we are now pushing much more now as a result of the war, the need to reduce energy usage. Now, we had COP26 started talking about reducing energy, having a less impact on the environment. COP26 was a huge thing, but it didn't do much, because they've done more in the last 3 weeks in this war to reduce energy consumption than they would have ever have done in COP26. So the two plans are, we look for alternative energy sources, or we use less energy. If we're looking at plans for option 2, then we need to be looking at micro and nanotechnologies. The smaller you can make things, the more efficient they are. The bigger something is, more energy is needed to drive it. So the investment now is into micro and nanotechnologies, making things very much smaller with higher efficiencies. So aircraft companies are not going to have 2 big engines hanging off their aircraft. They're going to be putting smaller engines, 6 or 7 engines on the bottom of the wing. Smaller engines, much more efficient, using much less fuel. And you'll see the drive for micro and nanotechnologies going forward. But what's already happening is this concept of smart systems and reducing supply chain differences, as we mentioned earlier on. Make the supply chain smaller, making the logistics costs less, and making the environment better. So where are the companies at the moment? Well, the companies are focused on all this cost containment stuff. They're not looking at innovation. They're looking at reducing costs of existing production. And the move to innovation is always difficult, because companies, as you can see here, are much more interested in becoming more efficient rather than being clever in what they do. So they've got a product and they'll stick with their product, and they will drive the cost down in that product. But in reality, what they should be doing is innovating. Innovation is much better. It's much more reliable. It gives you much better market opportunities, and it's less impacted by outsourcing. And the innovation spectrum that we're focusing on is on the right-hand side here. As business people, what we need to be looking at is the softer elements of innovation. On the left-hand side, you'll see new and advanced technologies, new and improved tech products, which come from engineering departments and computer science departments and so on. And on the right-hand side is what business people should be looking at. New production concepts, new supply chain management theories, new value-added services and support. And this is where the innovation can come from within business school environments and from business people. And in order for us to start to look at innovation, what we will now start to look at is the whole concept of smart systems. Now, I've titled this the Fourth Industrial Revolution because you may hear smart systems also being called Industry 4.0, termed by the Germans, where they believe we're currently in this fourth industrial revolution phase. Now, to very quickly go through this, the first industrial revolution, Industry 1, was mechanization back in the 1800s, where we used coal in order to power steam to power machines. Then later in the 1800s, it went into electrification. So Industry 2 was electrification through providing machines that can run off electricity. And then into the 1960s and 70s, the third industrial revolution was computerization and robotics. The fourth industrial revolution is today, and it's using the computing and robotic capabilities and connecting them to cyberspace. So the fourth industrial revolution, smart systems, are technologies that are connected to the internet. So the idea is I could design a product on my computer today, I could press the button, and within 30 seconds, it's running a machine over in Vietnam. And we're coming back to designing somewhere here and making somewhere else. That supply chain, if you think about it, has gone like that immediately, because you've just sent digital information across the other end of the world, 7 or 8 hours ahead of us, within a couple of seconds. And that is where the capacity of the Internet of Things or smart systems is in. It's in this connection to cyberspace. So the type of ideas that we're looking at with smart technologies are here. We know that companies now are looking at robotic cutting of meat in food factories so that you reduce injury to human beings. We can cut closer to the bone, so therefore we're getting greater yield on our product. NASA are sending astronauts up to space, and they can 3D print pizzas. So they keep all the individual ingredients in separate containers. When they get up to the top, this machine actually produces a pizza for them through a robotic structure. So again, allowing them to have these products separately contained rather than producing a product and flying it up into space. Drones are being used for precision agriculture. So they use global positioning systems and satellites to monitor their crops. Interesting one, edible packaging and micro packaging. So they've got packages now with sensors in them to tell you when the bacteria in the package is getting too high, and will tell you to get rid of that product. So there's going to be no use by or sell by dates, and your smart fridge will actually tell you when to get rid of that product as well. Barcoding and smart sensors are already out there. Vision systems are already out there. We all know those. But the idea is that we design here, make there. So if I'm in Vietnam today, I can be designing something there, pressing a button, and a machine will go on in the United States to produce whatever we need for that market. So as long as we've got the technologies throughout the world and we connect them through cyberspace, we've got our capability. But it's about reducing uncertainty, increasing productivity, reducing energy consumption of products, which is really the key issue of smart technologies. We talk about this as being something in the future. Well, it's already here. If you start to look at a bookstore, we could go to the bookstore and buy a book, or we could go on to Amazon or Alibaba or any of the other systems, and we can download a book at any one time, any time of day or night. We could go to a record store, but we downstream onto our mobile phones now. It gives the consumer an opportunity to buy anything at any time of the day. Retail outlets the same, and taxi sharing being the same. So the Internet of Things are allowing us to operate much smarter. Have you got something in your normal daily routine that would be considered to be smart?
I think it's the digital wallet, or like the e-commerce apps. I think those are the smart things.
That's it, yeah. Your whole world is connected by apps. And what an app is what is termed a cyber physical system. It connects the internet to your mobile phone to give you what you want. What are we going to be looking at? Well, we're looking at innovation, we're looking at new technologies, we're looking at smart technologies. These are the areas for businesses to grow in the future. So personalizing low value goods such as food. We're now getting, if you went onto Facebook, you're able to find businesses who will ask you to put a blood sample in a bottle and send it to them, and then they will come back to you and tell you what nutrients you would need. So therefore you'd get a personalized diet. So you've got all sorts of things going on now in using smart systems. There's one there, BMW produces 1,000 vehicles a day from one assembly line. Each of those vehicles has got its own customer requirement. The errors from them are zero because the technology is so advanced, it can actually work out exactly what's needed per car, and 1,000 come off one production line a day. And we're now looking at innovation and co-evolution. Not enough companies are focused on innovation. Lots of companies are looking at how they save money rather than how they make money. The systems of innovation are not well connected in businesses. And human capital is absolutely essential. Without human beings, you can't innovate. And once we talk about robots and computers, that's fantastic. But without human beings, a robot is useless. Without human beings, a robot is stupid. It can't do anything. The computer can't do anything without a human being. So human capital is the big thing. Even though we talk about technologies and talk about internet and we talk about robots, human capital is absolutely critical. So now we're going to be looking at new automation, new production concepts, new value-added services, and global production is still a requirement. And what I was going to look at is this concept of management 4.0. We have industry 4.0, and we know that we're now starting to look at businesses that run across the world. Everything's connected, interconnected. And now we know that management has to change, because now I, as a manager, are not in the position to manage people anymore, because that my person that I'm working with is probably in Vietnam now. And if I was to work and design on something, that person is thousands of miles away from me. So we're not going to be managing people in the same way as we did before. So we need a new style of leadership and management for businesses. What is that going to look like? So we need a new system of management rather than styles of management. And this shows you the evolution of Management 4. In Management 1, very similar to what we said about the first Industrial Revolution, it was scientific management, command and control, managing individuals. Then Management 2 came in and we started to manage systems. So we then started to look at process improvement and efficiencies. Then in Management 3, we started to look at agility, being quicker, more responsive. And now into Management 4, and this is the new driver for us. Systems of learning. How do we get people to learn and think for themselves? We don't manage people anymore, we manage a system that allows the person to think for themselves and to do the job themselves. So we're now looking at leadership paradigms and moving away from management into leadership. And at the moment, that is the big driver, that's the big thinking area that in universities and businesses are looking at. And again, yourselves are at the right time coming into this area to start looking at what this will mean for businesses in the future. The research agenda items that we're going to be looking at are what are the key drivers and barriers to companies that will be implementing things like Management 4. Are companies prepared to take for digital technologies and systems? Many companies are, some are still not. And do companies know what leadership and management systems are needed to manage the new state? So these are key research areas in the area of business management. When you go to university or in your universities, what we need to be looking at are these areas here. New management theories. What are they looking like? New models of learning. Look at us today. We're doing this and I'm connecting to you many thousands of miles away and we're all learning together and we're all having a chat together. 3 years ago, we wouldn't have done that. That would have been me getting on the plane in London, flying out to Vietnam to speak to you face to face. We're doing it now remotely. So new models of learning are coming in. We're now going to be much more fixed on Teams or Skype or other mechanisms for delivering learning. The psychology of human-computer interaction is important because many companies now are replacing people with robots. And then you'll have a human being sitting there working with a robot. Now that's a very different psychological concept when you're working with a robot 8 hours a day, because the robot's not going to speak back to you. The psychology of leadership, industrial psychology, new leadership paradigms. All these are new elements of work that we need to start looking at going forward within business and management. An entrepreneur looks at setting up businesses, innovating, but through new businesses outside. An intrapreneur looks at innovating the business from within the company outwards. Huge demand for intrapreneurs. That's what we're talking about today, is this innovation and developing an intrapreneurial spirit within the businesses. And we need to change the behavior and make it stick. That is the most important thing. We can't do anything unless we change our behaviors, change our mindsets, and make it stick forever. Yes, thank you very much for listening. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you so much, Professor Andrew.
Thank you.
The students, do you have any questions for Professor Thomas?
Yeah, I know about the successful intelligence of robots, but do you think is convenience and is a new way to take a robot as a passive management in a business innovations?
Yes, no, that's a good question. Thank you very much for that. I mean, primarily robots are being used in for a number of issues. Some of them are for safety concerns. So for instance, we would put robots into an area where it's dangerous for a human being to be involved in. But even more so, now we're starting to look at robot tellers within banks, for instance. So they're making decisions in finance. So of course, decisions in finance, people will be working on a system, financial system, and they'll be told once it's reached a certain level, they can sell the product or buy the product at a certain level, a certain point level. Now a robot can do that. There's no need for anybody to sit there and press the button. A robot can do it. So robots are being used in a range of different areas now. So even though they used to be done for very simple manual jobs where we would replace human beings, now we're starting to use them in banks, in financial institutions, where they're making actual decisions on our behalf. But if you program that in, then that's good information. And now starting to use artificial intelligence by pumping in data analytics to it as well, then the robot can crunch the numbers and come up with different decision-making points and can buy and sell stocks very, very quickly, and they're quite accurate, much more accurate than human beings.
Như Huyền, you seems like you have a question too, do you?
So now the greatest risk of like the global supply chains, including Vietnam supply chain, had shifted from the pandemic to the Russia-Ukraine military conflict and the geopolitical and economic uncertainties that it has created for the past few weeks. So like as a supply chain expert, do you have any advice for Vietnam, for business leaders, for authorities to like take this crisis as an opportunity to ramp up trade between Vietnam and Russia and other affected countries? Thank you.
Fantastic question. Yes, I mean, halfway when you were asking that question, I said, yeah, it went through my head, take the opportunity. There is a massive opportunity for Vietnam at this point. Whilst Europe is fighting and not being nice to each other, as we're saying, technologies mean that you can do the clever stuff in Vietnam and connect up with businesses the other end of the world. You don't have to fly aircraft over war zones. You don't have to fly aircraft into anywhere dangerous anymore. You produce the product in your country, you press the button and it's made in the UK. We've not flown anywhere. We've not done anything. So using technologies and using the opportunity, the geopolitical opportunities that have arisen as a result of it, means that Vietnam could be in a very, very good position going forward. I've been working with the university, the UET, VNU UET, over the last 6 or 7 months. Yeah, the University of Engineering and Technology. I mean, your engineering and technology universities are really, really good. And again, you've got that technological base in your country to do something about this very, very quickly. And that is the huge opportunity. You've got very, very clever people with very, very good universities, and the opportunity is there. So take it.
Thank you so much, Professor Andrew, for a very, very insightful lecture. Right after this, we'll have a quick introductions video about Aberystwyth University, and we'll come right back with a Q&A sessions with you, Professor Andrew, and a representative from Aberystwyth University. Stay tuned, and we'll see you live from Wales. Xin chào tất cả các bạn khán giả đã quay trở lại đến phần 2 của lớp học trực tuyến của chúng ta IFO Classroom Season 4 Live from Wales. Vừa rồi thì chúng ta vừa mới được học một lớp học hơi là nhiều kiến thức một chút nhỉ, tại vì nó là một lớp dành cho trình độ thạc sĩ của trường đại học Aberystwyth University, đại học lớn nhất của Vương quốc Anh. Và trong phần thứ 2 Q&A này thì chúng ta sẽ cùng trò chuyện thật là thân mật và gần gũi hơn để không chỉ hiểu thêm về bộ môn Supply Chain mà còn để học thêm về trường đại học Aberystwyth nữa. Và có mặt cùng Trâm hiện tại bây giờ vẫn chính là giáo sư Andrew Thomas, hiệu trưởng của Aberystwyth Business School, ngôi trường trực thuộc đại học Aberystwyth. Chúng ta còn có cô Maryann Vargis, đại diện đến từ trường đại học Aberystwyth, sẽ giúp chúng ta giải đáp các câu hỏi về trường, cũng như là bạn Thu Giang, hay còn được gọi thân thương là Stephanie nhỉ. Bạn Thu Giang hiện tại đang là sinh viên ngành Law and Business and Management của đại học Aberystwyth. First of all, I'd like to invite Ms. Maryann to introduce yourself a little bit to our audiences.
Thank you, Hong. My name is Maryann, and I'm the Southeast Asia Manager for Aberystwyth University. I'm based in Malaysia, but we cover student recruitment for the whole of Southeast Asia, where Vietnam comes under our responsibility. So thank you for having us today.
Thank you for being with us today. And Thu Giang or Stephanie, whichever one you prefer.
You can call me anything that you want. Okay, so my name is Zhang and Stephanie is my English name. I'm doing my 3rd year in Aberystwyth University and my subject is Law with Business Management. I'm 20 years old, so hi guys.
Wow, 20 years old, very young. And và trong buổi học ngày hôm nay thì chúng ta vẫn còn 3 bạn nữ sinh vô cùng là xinh xắn sẽ tiếp tục cùng tham gia buổi trò chuyện này, đó là Hân, Minh Yến và Hà Thanh. Không biết là mình có thể mời các bạn chia sẻ cảm nhận của mình sau khi tham dự lớp học không nhỉ? Hà Thanh, how did you feel after a very insightful and a lot of knowledge dense kind of class?
Yes. So first of all, I want to send a warm greeting to all of the people watching the live stream right now, Professor Andrew, our MC, our guests, and the audiences. So I was really grateful for being able to attend the last class, the MBA Supply Chain. And the only reason that made me sign up for the class was to experience how a MBA lesson taught by a professor from Wales goes on, but the knowledge I received was really mind-blowing. And it was really amazing, both the lecture and the way Professor Andrew conveyed it. Yeah.
Thank you so much Hà Thanh. Vừa rồi thì bạn Hà Thanh chia sẻ là lúc đầu bạn ấy đăng ký tham gia lớp học này chỉ là muốn biết như thế nào là một cảm giác đi học một cái lớp học thạc sĩ thôi. Nhưng mà bạn ấy nhận lại nhiều hơn thế. Những kiến thức mà học trong lớp vừa rồi thì bạn ấy vô cùng là quý và bạn ấy cảm giác như là được mở mang rất là nhiều. How about you, Hun? How do you feel after the class?
Well, hi guys. Well, after attending the class, to be honest, I'm still so confused because I have no idea that supply chain is such an elaborate system operating so that consumers can receive their order items from businesses. So I really hope that in this Q&A section, I will be informed a lot more about this intriguing subject. Yes.
Thank you, Hân. Bạn Hân chia sẻ là trong cái lớp học vừa rồi thì sau khi xong một lớp học xong bạn ấy vẫn cảm giác như là có thật là nhiều kiến thức mới quá và còn rất là nhiều câu hỏi, cho nên là bạn ấy hy vọng là sẽ được giải đáp thêm trong buổi Q&A này. Và đó là những chia sẻ rất là chân thực từ các bạn đã đại diện tham gia lớp học cùng thầy Andrew. Các bạn khán giả đang xem chương trình trực tiếp ơi, các bạn nếu mà đã có câu hỏi cho mình thì hãy comment ngay câu hỏi ở ngay dưới phần bình luận, thì chúng mình sẽ gửi câu hỏi đấy cho thầy Andrew và chúng ta hãy cùng giải đáp với nhau nha. Còn ngay bây giờ thì bởi vì Hân vừa mới chia sẻ là bạn ấy có rất là nhiều câu hỏi nên là sẽ mời Hân hỏi thầy Andrew đầu tiên. Go ahead, Hân.
Hello, Mr. Thomas. So my question is, what are the key emerging trends regarding the global supply chain?
Okay, I suppose the key trend is technology. If you consider that globalization of all sorts of issues, manufacturing-based globalization is driven by technology. So distinct changes in technology creates the next stage of globalization. And we're at a stage now where we're looking at technology that is effectively computer and robotic based technology that is now connected to the internet, that allows us now to change the way in which we do things, make quicker and faster decisions, more accurate decisions on the basis of technology. And that is where supply chains are going to go in the future. So we're unlikely to have lots of products being flown or shipped to various parts of the world. The technologies will be able to connect ourselves from one country to the next, and we may design in the UK a product, but we could get it made in Vietnam quite quickly through appropriate machinery and systems. So the globalization, the issue around transferring people and goods and ideas across the world is now shrinking, and we're now going to be using technology to produce things directly in Vietnam, directly in China and elsewhere.
Thank you, Professor Andrew. So you say, well, in the lecture, we were talking about outsourcing and reshoring back to the country. But then the new trend would take the designs for outsourcing easier?
It certainly can do, as long as you have the technologies that are compatible with other businesses across the world, then that will be quite a simple thing to do. So what you saw in globalization years ago was this business of ideas and products being spread across the world. Mm-hmm. Now, with technology, we can keep people in their respective countries, mm-hmm. and just close back the globalization context. So we're still globalized, but we all could be sitting at home, as we probably are today. We're talking to each other from thousands of miles away. We're all sitting in our respective offices or in our houses, getting the same level of information that 2 or 3 years back we would have had to have flown to Vietnam to deliver. So that is globalization in itself. Globalization of knowledge means now that we've got smaller supply chains that we just sit in our offices and deliver. We still can't get over the time differences, obviously, but we can still get over the logistics of getting to the countries by simply working with technology. So this is an example of how globalization will start to shrink the world to some extent.
That's very interesting. Vừa rồi thì bạn Hân hỏi thầy Andrew là những cái xu hướng mới nào sẽ ảnh hưởng đến global supply chain, và thầy Andrew trả lời là điều quan trọng nhất, cũng là cái điều mà chúng ta thấy dễ nhất, đó chính là công nghệ. Công nghệ đã kết nối con người chúng ta từ rất là nhiều năm trước, khi mà từ ở một nước này có thể thiết kế ra một cái hệ thống nào đó và chuyển công nghệ sang một nước khác để mà có thể sản xuất và đóng góp và lắp ráp và ship đi những nơi cần thiết, thì đó gọi là toàn cầu hóa khi mà chúng ta mở rộng những cái mối quan hệ ra. Tuy nhiên thì cũng có một cái càng ngày nay thì nó sẽ lại đóng ở một cái chỗ là khi mà chúng ta vẫn có thể toàn cầu hóa, chúng ta vẫn có thể làm được tất cả mọi thứ ở phía bên kia thế giới, nhưng chúng ta không cần phải sang bên đấy trực tiếp nữa, mà công nghệ nó có thể giúp chúng ta chuyển đổi những cái kỹ thuật nó nhanh hơn, nó tiện hơn. And Minh-Yến, I also saw that you have some questions to Professor Andrew, right?
Yeah, after I'm taking in your class, and I feel a little bit scared because I have a lot of information need to observe. So, and I have a question that's with a lot of information. So, maybe I have some skill that can help me to observe it more easily. So I want to ask, like, what skill do I need in order to become a logistics and supply chain expert?
Good question. Sorry about that. For some reason, my camera knocked itself off there. That's a very good question, because the future skills requirements for supply chain managers of the future are going to be different. It's not necessarily that we mean, when we talk about technologies, it's not necessarily that we mean that we have to be very good at computer programming or coding or whatever. What we're actually going to be trying to look at is the leadership skills amongst people. So technology is likely to do away with management roles. So if you think about leadership and management as two separate concepts, a leader is all about doing the right things. A manager is about doing things right, okay, making decisions on a day-to-day basis. What we can get out of technology today is that technology, as long as they've got the information coming in, technology can make its own decisions. So if we're in a bank or we're deciding to work with a supplier, a computer algorithm can do the management work. What a computer cannot do is do the leadership work. It can't do the right things. It can't identify new suppliers. It cannot work and change products and develop new products and ideas. That has to come from humans. So we'll see later that management techniques will go and become less, and machines will be able to think for themselves to some extent. But leadership in supply chains will still be a human condition, a human trait, and becoming a good leader in making sure that you can identify new markets, new suppliers, develop new products is what's going to be key. So somebody that's innovative, creative, and can basically bring people on board and drive and enthuse people to do a job is really what we're going to be looking at in the future. Alongside understanding, obviously, supply chain systems and customer demands and how your suppliers will connect with that customer demand. But in reality, leadership is going to be the key thing going forward.
Thank you, Professor Andrew. And I think that is the most diplomatic and most sensible answer out there, regardless of whichever profession that you decide to pursue in the future. Leadership and creativity and knowing people skill, knowing how to work with people is always the main skill that you need to work at. Vừa rồi thì bạn Minh Yến có hỏi thầy Andrew là giữa một cái xã hội đang thay đổi rất là nhanh như thế này thì đâu sẽ là những cái yếu tố, những cái kỹ năng và những cái phẩm chất cần thiết nhất để có thể trở thành một chuyên gia về logistics và supply chain. Thì thầy Andrew nói là ngoài việc là nắm bắt được những cái kiến thức cơ bản, những kiến thức nâng cao, hiểu được chế độ cung cầu làm như thế nào để đáp ứng được với khách hàng, thì cái điều quan trọng nhất vẫn luôn luôn là khả năng lãnh đạo, khả năng work, khả năng làm việc với những người khác và khả năng làm sao để mà tìm ra được những cái xu hướng mới để có thể bắt kịp nó và tạo ra những cái công nghệ, tạo ra những sản phẩm như thế nào đó để mà đáp ứng được nhu cầu của khán giả, của khách hàng. Thì đó luôn luôn sẽ là cái kỹ năng quan trọng nhất. Và để mà hiểu rõ hơn về cách học như thế nào để trở thành những người có thể năng động hơn, toàn cầu hóa hơn, thì chúng ta hãy cùng đến với bạn du học sinh hiện tại đang ở Aberystwyth, Thu Giang or Stephanie. I'd like to interview you a little bit on how did you come across Aberystwyth University? How did you decide to go there, and how's your life over there?
So I've known Aberystwyth University through a fest through by the British Council. Yeah, it's like 4 years ago. I don't really remember, 4 or 5 years. And the British Council has organized a festival that about 46 or 47 university from the UK has come to the festival. Yeah, and I've been there and going around the festival, but the representative of Aberystwyth Universities has, invited me to come to another, what is that called? So they threw a meeting that teach the student to do a personal statement or teaching about a business sessions. Yes, and I feel very interested because another representative, I don't want to say this, but the other representative, they just, introduced about the university, but not as friendly as Aberystwyth University. I'm sorry if I make this wrong, but yeah.
It's okay because people click with different people. You just vibe with Aberystwyth University, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, the representative of Aberystwyth are so friendly, and they make me feel like I belongs to Aberystwyth, because normally if you come to a foreign country and to study abroad or just to live, you will feel very scared, right? To adapting to new environments and meeting new people, adapting new cultures. So you gotta find some things that you feel belongs to. So Aberystwyth would give me that vibes. So yeah, I come to their personal meeting. It's not personal, but like their meeting through by Aberystwyth. And yeah, the teacher and the representative make me feel belongs, like you know, feels interested and feel like I'm gonna study and live in Aberystwyth well. So I'm sorry. So yeah. And I asked their representative how to apply to Aberystwyth, and they give me all the information. And the important things I think that the students are worried about is about the tuition fees and the living cost in a new foreign country. And their fees are very reasonable. And the study quality is very high. So I think it's good for a student who looking for opportunity to study in a foreign country. So yeah, that's how I come to Aberystwyth.
That's a very interesting path. It's almost like you're destined to be there. You're destined to be there.
Yes.
Vừa rồi thì mình vừa mới hỏi Thu Giang là cơ duyên nào đã đưa Giang đến với trường Aberystwyth University. Tại sao Giang lại chọn trường Aberystwyth mà lại không có một trường nào khác? Và cuộc sống của bạn ấy bên đó hiện tại nó như thế nào? Thì Thu Giang trả lời là Thu Giang đã được gặp gỡ trường Aberystwyth vào khoảng 4-5 năm trước tại một cái gọi là gì? Một hội thảo du học của British Council, của Hội đồng Anh. Và ngay lúc đấy thì khi bạn ấy được gặp rất là nhiều các đại diện từ các trường thì bạn ấy cảm thấy đại diện của Aberystwyth là đại diện thân thiện nhất, là bạn ấy tự nhiên thấy quý nhất, kiểu như là thích từ cái nhìn đầu tiên dành cho cái trường Aberystwyth. Vì vậy là bạn ấy đã ở lại nói trò chuyện và tham gia thêm một cái buổi workshop nho nhỏ thêm để mà như thế nào, rèn luyện về kỹ năng viết luận này và làm như thế nào, một cái business workshop dành cho bạn ấy. Và từ đó thì bạn ấy cảm nhận được là đây là một môi trường rất là thân thiện, là bạn ấy rất là thích nơi này. Thì từ đó bạn ấy cũng chia sẻ là khi mà mình đi du học thì luôn luôn mình sẽ cảm giác khá là lo ngại khi mà mình đến một cái đất nước mới nó sẽ như thế nào, mình có cảm thấy an toàn hay không, có thích hay không. Thì ở đây bạn cảm giác mọi người rất là thân thiện, rất là dễ gần, và vì vậy bạn ấy tin tưởng và cứ thế là chọn Aberystwyth University thôi. Hà Thanh ơi, vừa nãy là mình thấy Hà Thanh cũng gật gù xong rồi cũng có vẻ như là rất hứng thú về Aberystwyth nhỉ. Không biết Hà Thanh có câu hỏi gì dành cho Thu Giang không?
Yes, so I've heard that you had a really good impression on the Aberystwyth University and both the Wales, right? So I just really want to ask you that what are the things that you like the most about Aberystwyth University and the Wales? Thank you.
The thing that I like the most is probably the people. I've been to some of cities in the UK, and it's made me feel like the Welsh are the friendliest people I've ever met, because can I tell you about a little story that I have been through in Aberystwyth? So when I first came here, I actually got lost. Like, yeah, because somehow I cannot access into the Wi-Fi, and I was trying to find a supermarket. So I used a map paper because in Aberystwyth they provide us with a lot of maps because the accommodation are very huge. So yeah, and I tried to find out by the map papers, but maybe I'm a blind reading in maps, so I got lost, and I was kind of shy, so I'm not very confident, so I just walking by myself without asking any people. But the people in here, they can literally tell that I'm lost because my face, and I was so panicked and so confused. So they stop and ask me like, "Oh, darling, are you getting lost? Do you need any help?" And they actually walk me into the supermarket without any hesitate. So I was like, wow, They are so friendly, and they are all Welsh. They are British. So I feels like I choose the right environment, choose the right university, the right place to come. So yeah, the things I like the most is the people.
And I think that is the most common answer we've received throughout this whole season of IFO Classroom Season 4, Live from Wales. Every single time that we ask any student studying in Wales, what do they like the most about the country, the environment over there? And they say it's always the people. And
yes,
that goes to show that how friendly and how nice the Welsh is. So thank you so much, Professor Andrew and Maryann, for representing the Welsh with us today. Vừa rồi thì bạn Hà Thanh vừa mới hỏi Thu Giang là điều gì là Thu Giang thích nhất ở Aberystwyth và cũng là ở xứ Wales, thì tại một câu trả lời rất là quen thuộc xuyên suốt một mùa IFO Classroom vừa rồi, thì bạn ấy vẫn trả lời là con người nơi đây cực kỳ là thân thiện. Bạn ấy kể là hồi bạn mới sang thì bạn ấy có bị lạc một lần, và lần đấy thì bạn ấy không thể kết nối được với wifi nên là phải dùng đến cả cái bản đồ giấy ấy, cái thứ mà chúng ta đã không sờ từ rất lâu rồi. Bạn ấy đã phải dùng bản đồ giấy và bạn ấy loay hoay giữa đường, và như thế là mọi người cứ đi ngang qua người Dương thôi, họ cũng sẽ chạy lại họ hỏi, quan tâm hỏi là bé ơi em bị lạc hay sao hả, có cần phải dẫn đi đâu không, và họ dẫn bạn ra đến tận nơi tận chỗ luôn. Và đó là một cái cũng gần như là first impression Giang nhỉ, cũng gần như là một ấn tượng đầu tiên khiến cho Giang rất là nhớ và Giang rất là quý. Từ đó là Giang cảm giác rất là thích Aberystwyth, cũng như là rất là thích xứ Wales. Chúng mình cũng vừa mới nhận được một câu hỏi từ khán giả gửi đến cho ban tổ chức của chương trình. Bạn khán giả hỏi Thu Giang là chị có thể chia sẻ thêm kinh nghiệm học tại Wales và tại trường Aberystwyth được không? Làm như thế nào để có thể học tập tốt ở một môi trường hoàn toàn khác như vậy? Ý chắc là hoàn toàn khác ở đây tức là khác với Việt Nam.
Okay. Should I answer this in English or Vietnamese? Because the question is from the student.
Whichever way you prefer. Do you prefer speaking English or Vietnamese?
Okay, I'm just gonna say in English then.
All right.
Yeah. So I always tell myself that 3 words are confidence, confidence, and confidence. It's very important to be confident, because if you be confident, you do not afraid to learn, to ask, and to become better. Yeah, that's the keys. I think so. And of course, hardworking, but like confidence. When I first came here, because I've told you guys that I was too shy to ask people. But like, if I be more confident, I ask somebody that I can, I can escape from the lost more quickly, right? So when you get struggling on study or anything, just ask your teacher, because the teacher himself, he usually told their student that if you have any question, just come and ask me. If you are shy, you do not like you are afraid to raise your hand in the middle of the class, then in the end of the class, just come and meet him. He will answer all of your concern. That's how our teacher usually told us. So why not? Why we have to be shy, right? We just be confident and ask people, ask your friends, ask your teacher if you don't understand anything. It's probably going to help you to study quicker, because they're teacher. Beside of hardworking, of course, like study by yourself. So yeah, always tell yourself to be confident.
Okay, what's important? You have to say it 3 times, right? Important things always need to be repeated.
Yes.
Vừa rồi thì bạn Giang chia sẻ là bạn ấy có 3 từ, đó là tự tin và tự tin. Những cái thứ quan trọng mình luôn phải nhắc 3 lần. Và bạn ấy bảo là chúng ta không bao giờ được, không nên sợ, không phải không bao giờ được, nhưng mà sợ một tí cũng được, nhưng mà hãy vượt qua cái nỗi sợ đó, không nên ngại ngùng, không nên rụt rè, mà hãy cứ mạnh dạn hỏi câu hỏi. Nếu như mà ở trong lớp bạn cảm thấy ngại quá trước rất là nhiều sinh viên khác và bạn không dám giơ tay hỏi, thì bạn có thể cuối giờ ở lại và hỏi thêm thầy. Đó cũng là một chuyện rất là bình thường. Khi mà giáo viên ở nước ngoài có office hours, có những cái giờ office hours, dịch ra tiếng Việt là gì nhỉ? Mình cũng không rõ nữa, nhưng mà office hours tức là giáo viên sẽ có những cái có những cái giờ riêng để mà có thể giải đáp những cái câu hỏi dành cho sinh viên, thì mình luôn luôn có thể tới và hỏi thêm để mà có thể học hỏi thêm kiến thức. Tại vì mình mất công đi học mà, nếu mà mình không hiểu thì có phải là mình lỗ không?
đúng không? Hoàn toàn mình là người lỗ, cho nên là mình hãy cứ mạnh dạn tự tin, cứ thế mà hỏi thầy cô, hỏi bạn bè, hỏi tất cả mọi người. Cũng cần phải cần cù chăm chỉ học bài nữa, nhưng mà cứ tự tin mạnh dạn, cái gì cũng sẽ làm được. Vừa rồi thì mình thấy Minh Yến có vẻ như là đang có một câu hỏi nhỉ?
Yes, I have a question for Miss Maryann. Yeah, I so interested with the with university because after Jan says, so I have a question that can you introduce some popular course or program about your university, both under and postgraduate? Yeah, you can talk about some course you want to promote in Vietnam, and how I can apply to this university.
Thank you so much, Maryann, for your question. So, well, over the years, we have welcomed a number of Vietnamese students to Aberystwyth University. First of all, we have, in fact, Stephanie joined us for foundation. So we do have a number of foundation students coming in from Vietnam. So students who have completed their year 12, you're more than welcome to apply for our foundation, where you will be guided to different careers and different progressions. You get to enhance your English knowledge better before you go in for your 3 years undergraduate program and 1 year master's program. Okay, so some of the popular programs at Aberystwyth among the Vietnamese students are for business, of course. And then we have had a number of students coming in for psychology, for computer science, especially like data science and AI and robotics. So that is for undergraduate. As for postgraduate, we have been seeing a number of good inquiries for business school and computing school as well. So that is why I think it was more apt for Professor Andrew to provide a lecture on the MBA Supply Chain Management, because we do have a number of MBA programs with us as well. So these are the programs that are popular at Aberystwyth, but it doesn't just confine to that. We've got various other programs from biological and environmental sciences to education, to arts, to there's plenty more. There's lots more other programs at the university. So as in how to apply to the university, well, you can actually apply directly. So if you are able to visit the university website, which is at www.aber, which is spelled as ABER.ac.uk, or you can actually visit our very own Vietnamese Facebook page. So if you look for Aberystwyth University Vietnam, we have a dedicated page for Vietnam, where you will also be able to find quite a number of Stephanie's video, her journey to Aberystwyth and her studies and all that as well. So you would be able to get in touch with me, and I'll be more than happy to guide you on how to apply and how to guide you with your visa application, your accommodation. We will guide you step by step through your entire application process. That is our responsibility.
Thank you, Miss Maryann. Vừa rồi thì Minh Yến vừa mới hỏi cô Maryann là cô có thể chia sẻ thêm một chút về các khóa học nổi bật của trường, cũng như là như thế nào cách nào để có thể mà nộp đơn để tham gia học ở Aberystwyth. Thì cô chia sẻ là ở Aberystwyth thì cũng có 2 hệ đào tạo. Một là cử nhân sẽ đào tạo trong vòng khoảng 3 năm và hệ thạc sĩ sẽ đào tạo trong khoảng 1 năm. Những ngành nổi trội của ngành cử nhân chúng ta có business là kinh doanh, có psychology là tâm lý, có computer science là khoa học máy tính. Trong đó nổi bật sẽ có những cái như là AI, là một trong những môn chúng ta học đầu tiên từ đầu mùa của IFO Classroom mùa 4 này. Còn có về robotics và rất nhiều ngành khác nữa. Còn về hệ thạc sĩ thì ở trường sẽ rất là nổi về cũng là hệ kinh doanh business và computer science.
Ngoài ra thì còn có rất là nhiều ngành khác như là ngành nghệ thuật này, văn học các thứ, thì các bạn luôn luôn các bạn thích khám phá tất các ngành học khác nhau ở Aberystwyth University. Và thông tin để có thể mà nộp đơn cho trường hoặc là có những cái giải đáp thắc mắc gì thì IFO chúng mình sẽ để lại link ở phía dưới phần bình luận các bạn nhé. Các bạn có thể apply trực tiếp qua trang web của Aberystwyth University luôn tại www.aber.com, hoặc là các bạn cũng có thể liên hệ với Facebook của Aberystwyth University Việt Nam. Chúng mình sẽ để ngay dưới phần bình luận nhé. Và mình vừa mới nhận được một câu hỏi nữa từ bạn khán giả tên Quân. Bạn Quân hỏi là như thế nào để có thể nộp đơn xin học bổng của trường, hoặc là trường sẽ hỗ trợ các sinh viên quốc tế như thế nào. Miss Maryann, we have another question from our audiences, and he asked, how can Aberystwyth University support international students via, say, scholarships, or would there be any special services for them?
Sure, of course. In fact, I'll be more than happy to share that information. So for international students coming into Aberystwyth University, as the regional office, as I mentioned earlier, we will be there to guide them step by step through the entire application process. So right from the time you put in your application to making sure you get your offer letters, applying for your accommodation, your visa application, and to when you're flying to the UK, there will be somebody from the university to pick you up and send you to your university accommodation, to orientation, and then settling into your classes. There'll be guidance all throughout. And then not only that, one of the things I think that makes Aberystwyth University unique, and that is why we are in fact ranked, I think one of the biggest reasons why we are ranked top 1 in the UK for student satisfaction is because of the kind of engagement we have with our students. We have program tutors who are actually academic. So I'm sure Professor Andrew does have his students as well, who the academics will be their guardian, will be guardians to the students from the start to the end of their program. So not only in terms of academic, but if the student is having difficulty in adapting to the place, or they're feeling homesick or anything, the university will be there to guide them through. On top of that, we provide services like in-sessional English. So besides your English qualification, when you are at the university preparing for your presentation and things like that, the university will guide you through with the in-sessional English and things like that. There are various clubs and societies run by the students, for students. So students can engage into various different activities, have a different outlook of life. These are just, and on top of that, we have the Aber careers, where not only for students at the university, but even after you have graduated, there are different workshops to guide you on how to, how to prepare a good CV, how to get a good cover note, how to apply for different kind of jobs. There are different workshops being provided, not only for current students, but also for alumni as well. These are some of the support that we do provide for our students joining Aberystwyth University. In terms of scholarships, well, as Stephanie had mentioned earlier, the tuition fees is quite competitive. And of course, living in Aberystwyth University, the cost of living is comparatively cheaper to other places as well. On top of that, what we do have is we do offer the International Accommodation Award, which is for all international students. So this is basically where you can obtain your accommodation at almost no cost at all. Okay, so that brings your cost of living to almost half. And then we have departmental scholarships, and we have the international, we also have entrance exams for undergraduate students. So students who are applying for undergraduate programs, they can sit for the entrance exam, and scholarships ranges from 2,000 up to £2,000. The International Accommodation Award can be up to £4,000. And of course, if you're applying for postgraduate programs, we have the Global Wales Scholarship. So we have scholarships worth up to £10,000 each. So these are just some of the scholarships that we do have. There are more. So I'll be more than happy to chat in detail if you'd like to know more about it.
Thank you, Ms. Maryann. I think that was quite enough to really engage our students, to really make them interested and want to learn more about Aberystwyth University. Vừa rồi thì cô Maryann trả lời là ở Aberystwyth thì trường rất là chăm sóc các bạn sinh viên quốc tế, sẽ hỗ trợ các bạn từ lúc mà apply vào trường, làm sao để apply được cả visa, và sẽ hỗ trợ các bạn xuyên suốt một quãng đường luôn. Từ khi bạn bay đến nơi sẽ đưa đón các bạn và đảm bảo là các bạn có thể về được đến phòng ký túc xá, có chỗ ăn, chỗ ngủ đàng hoàng các thứ. Ở trong trường thì cũng có rất là nhiều câu lạc bộ, có rất là nhiều hoạt động cho sinh viên tham gia, có những hoạt động hướng nghiệp để giúp các bạn chuẩn bị cho sự nghiệp sau này, cũng như là có những cái hoạt động để giúp các bạn ngoài học thuật ra thì cũng có thể hòa nhập được vào với văn hóa của xứ Wales nữa. Và đó cũng là một trong những lý do mà giúp cho trường Aberystwyth được trở thành trường số 1 của UK về mức độ hài lòng của sinh viên. Ngoài ra thì học phí của trường cũng rất là cạnh tranh. Trường cũng có học bổng hỗ trợ cho tất cả các sinh viên quốc tế, và có chương trình hỗ trợ giúp các bạn có thể đỡ chi phí ăn ở đó. Và khi mà các bạn nộp có những cái loại học bổng dành riêng cho từng ngành nghề nữa, và tổng giá trị học bổng có thể lên đến tận 10.000 bảng. Cho nên là các bạn nếu mà có bất kỳ câu hỏi gì thì hãy đừng ngại ngần mà có thể liên hệ với Aberystwyth University hoặc là liên hệ trực tiếp với cô Maryann. Do là thời hạn của chương trình có hạn nên chúng ta không thể nào trả lời được hết tất cả những câu hỏi mà các bạn khán giả cả nước gửi đến, nhưng mà chúng mình rất là mong là qua một cái buổi Q&A vừa rồi, mọi người cũng đã có thể hiểu hơn về Aberystwyth University, cũng như là một lớp học hệ thạc sĩ như thế nào, hoặc cũng như là về môn học Supply Chain Management thì nó ra sao. Hãy cùng Bảo Trâm gửi lời cảm ơn tới các khách mời của chúng ta ngày hôm nay. Cảm ơn cô Maryann, cảm ơn Thu Giang, cảm ơn ba bạn sinh viên, và cảm ơn thầy Andrew nữa. Professor Andrew, thank you so much for being with us today. It has been a very insightful lecture, and we really appreciate you staying for a very knowledgeable Q&A session as well. Before we end today's sessions, would you like to say any end notes to our students, or how did you feel after meeting our Vietnamese students?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It was really good to be able to deliver a lecture to yourselves. The questions that came from your panel group were excellent questions, really pushing the boundaries of where supply chains go in the future. As we've discussed as well, the opportunity for Vietnam as a country to capitalize on the changing nature of globalization and the role of technology is very much there. And you as students will be at the forefront of that change going forward. So you're at a very exciting time in the world today, and yourselves as young graduates will provide the opportunity for Vietnam to grow in the future. So it's all looking good.
Thank you, Professor Andrew, and we really do hope that one day we'll get to invite you to Vietnam to deliver a class in person, or we'll get to join your class in Wales in person.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Vừa rồi thì thầy Andrew vừa mới chia sẻ là lớp học vừa rồi với các bạn sinh viên Việt Nam thực sự là thú vị đối với thầy. Các câu hỏi mà các bạn đặt ra trong toàn bộ lớp học là những câu hỏi vô cùng là sâu sắc, rất là sắc bén, và thầy cũng chia sẻ là Việt Nam đang là một trong những nước có cơ hội có thể dẫn đầu xu thế về những thay đổi của tương lai. Cho nên thầy gửi gắm rất là nhiều niềm tin và hy vọng dành cho các lớp trẻ, các bạn đang ở trong lớp này của chúng ta, cũng như là toàn bộ các bạn trẻ của Việt Nam. Một lần nữa thì mình cảm ơn tất cả các bạn đã theo dõi chương trình, đã theo dõi lớp học của chúng ta ngày hôm nay. Hẹn gặp lại mọi người vào thứ 3 tuần sau lúc 8 giờ tối để chúng ta có thể gặp nhau vào một lần cuối của lớp học IFO Classroom 1 số 4 nha. Còn bây giờ, xin chào và hẹn gặp lại của các bạn. Bye bye!
Bye!